King. I live at 36 Kendall Hill Road, and I will be your moderator as per election last year. This is our deliberative session. Masks are not required. They're welcome. There are some masks in the back of the room if anyone would like one. I want to thank the district staff for getting this meeting pulled together. Jonathan White for doing our technology over here. Principal Lecklider for helping organize the meeting, setting up the room. The janitorial staff for keeping this place looking great. And as well as Roger Preston for also, working with the building staff. So I call to order the 2023 Mont Vernon School District deliberative session, which is governed by the official ballot referendum system, better known as SB2, for the New Hampshire Senate bill that enacted this procedure. Now, if we could please rise, I'll give a quick invocation. We gather to make decisions for our community and schools. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral. As we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Thank you, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. So this evening, we're participating in the school district deliberative session on Tuesday, March 14th, between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Again, here at the Village School, all registered voters will be able to vote on the paper ballots on the warrant as we agree to its wording tonight. We will not be voting on the warrants tonight, just the wording to be placed on the ballots. Please mute or turn off your cell phones. There's relevant and important documents at the back of the room. Hopefully everyone has picked up their materials for this meeting. May I ask, is the school board going to meet after this session? Yes, the school board will meet after this session to review the items discussed in this session. I'd like to introduce the school board. This is Sarah running across the thing here. Sarah Lawrence is the chair. Jessica Hinckley is the secretary. Peter Eckhoff. Kristen Clark and George Torres will be joining us. We do have a quorum, so we may proceed in their absence, but they will be here. I also want to recognize Autumn Gardina, who is our school district clerk and my loyal assistant here. Lynn Jennings is our school district treasurer. She's not here. I don't see her. In the back of the room, we have our supervisors of the checklist, Bill Sanford and Linda Carlton. Thank you for being here. And finally, I want to thank Danye Murata for being our scribe for this meeting. So I'd like to ask Superintendent Chamberlain to say a few words and to introduce his team. Superintendent.
Thank you. It is my pleasure. I'll begin with introductions. To my far right, Tom Lecklider, principal of Mont Vernon Village School. Christine Landwell, assistant superintendent. Amy Facey, business administrator. And in the audience, Meg Beauchamp, director of student services. Thank you all for all your work. As Peter said, my name is Steve Chamberlain. I'm privileged to serve as your interim superintendent. And please know I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity. One of the charges of a superintendent is to provide a welcome back speech at the beginning of the year. This year, I set promise as the theme of the 2022-2023 school year. I like the word promise. There's a couple of meanings. There's a promise meaning a commitment and promise meaning potential. Please know I'm deeply committed to the schools of the SAU 39 fulfilling the promise of public education. And I'm honored to tell you right here, right now, that I believe the Mount Vernon Village School does fulfill the promise of public education. This is a special school, a school filled with faculty and staff with high expectations, great skill and care for each child. A faculty and staff that places students at the center of all things. They know each child here, and they do what's best for each child. I've been awed at each month we do a presentation by the faculty and staff, and they provided that each year of the Mount Vernon School Journey, there's a special developmentally appropriate research-based activity for each grade level. It's so much fun to watch that, understand the student experience. They are committed to evidence and research-based, and this group of faculty and staff is willing to innovate. I've been privileged to sit knee to knee with teachers learning from invested, devoted professionals. I've seen firsthand Christine's vision of a rigorous, engaging curriculum come to fruition. I've seen Tom value each student by committing to the whole child with high academic expectations. This really is a special place. I'd like to thank the Mount Vernon Board for their commitment to student learning and understanding the burden that New Hampshire funding system places on the residents of this community. I would also like to acknowledge the great work of Roger Preston, our facility director this week. It was his diligence and his team's work ethic that minimized the impact of the burst pipe this week and able to get back at it after one day. I look forward to continuing this work through the end of the school year and next year supporting Mr. Barry, the superintendent designee, as he transitions to the superintendency next year. Tonight, look forward to working with Amy and all of us to provide all the information you need to understand the FY24 budget. That's what we're here for, and I'm really glad you're here, and just welcome.
Sorry. Typically, I introduce the budget committee at this point. We did not have a budget committee this year. So let's begin. Our work tonight is to decide the wording, including the dollar amount. Oh, I'm sorry. One more introduction is the district's counsel, Steve Bennett, is here as well in the front row there. So the work tonight is to decide the wording, including dollar amounts as appropriate on the article, which all registered voters will have an opportunity to vote during the election here at the village school, where you will also be going to elect candidates for important town and school positions on that day. As voters of the deliberative session under SB2, you're able to do two things. So first, explain, discuss, and debate each warrant article. And second, we will take one of two courses of action on each warrant article. The first course of action is to maintain the original wording of the article, in which case that wording is placed on the official ballot. No vote is required to maintain the original wording of the warrant article. The second course of action is a vote to amend the original wording of the article. If the amendment is approved, the amended warrant will be placed on the official ballot. To amend, a motion is made and seconded with favorable vote by a simple majority. Finally, I'm going to ask for a request to restrict reconsideration after actions are complete for each article. If this is moved, seconded, and approved, then the voters will not be able to revisit this article during the meeting tonight. I have provided a copy of the moderator's rules of procedure. I'll go through them rather quickly. Only Mont Vernon registered voters, plus SAU staff and school district officials recognized by the moderator will be allowed to speak. Each motion to amend will be voted on before another motion to amend will be entertained. In other words, I will not accept an amendment to an amendment. We'll have to solve one thing at a time. Speakers must speak from the central microphone. Please state your name and address each time you speak, so that we can record that in the minutes. I'm not going to accept a motion to call the question until there has been sufficient debate. Motions to pass over, table, or postpone will not be accepted. And any voter may challenge the ruling of the moderator. It's your meeting and you ultimately decide the rules. Are there any questions on the rules? Hearing none, let's proceed. So Article 1 is for the election of officers. We don't have the ability to debate or alter this article. Therefore, I will read it and ask that it be moved to be placed on the ballot. Article 1, election of officers. Voting by official ballot on March 14, 2023. To the following school district offices. A, to choose one school board member for the ensuing 3 years. B, to choose one school district moderator for the ensuing 1 year. C, to choose one school district clerk for the ensuing 1 year. D, to choose one school district treasurer for the ensuing 1 year. Voting for these offices will be at the polls on March 14th, 2023. We will not discuss these offices tonight. Do I have a motion to move that?
I make a motion to move Article 1.
Motion by Ms. Lawrence. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Hinckley. Thank you. It will be placed on the ballot. Article 2 is for the general budget. Shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles or other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted and the warrant as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein totaling $6,349,455. Should this article be defeated, the default budget will be $6,266,304, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Mont Vernon School District or by law, where the governing body may hold a special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13 X and XVI to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. There's a majority vote required. This was recommended by the Mont Vernon School Board 5-0. The estimated tax impact of passing this article is $1.84 per thousand. The estimated tax impact of not passing the article is $1.58 per thousand. Please note that warrant Article 2 does not include appropriations proposed in other warrant articles below. I'd like to recognize the board to move Article 2.
I'd like to move Article 2.
Okay, and second?
I'll second.
And seconded by Ms. Hinckley. So I'd like to recognize Sarah. Will you do the presentation on the budget? Okay. So I'm going to recognize the board to introduce the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the slide that you see behind me is our main points of the story.
No.
Oh. It's not, it's off the screen.
Not much we can do about that, is there?
Hold on, we'll see what we can do.
Need a big poll. Wow.
Can you take it out of presentation mode, maybe?
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
It takes a village. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was good. We're off to a good start. Thank you for your collaboration. So the story that we have for the budget is up on the slide that you can see behind me. Our major pieces of the puzzle here. We have an increase in student services costs this year. The main drivers of that are transportation and student need. We're going to also dig into this as we go through, but here's high level, okay? Our second component is an increase in our tuition to the Amherst Middle School. That is based on the number of students that we send to the middle school, and it's also based on the average cost per pupil. So that changes based year by year, based again on the number of students, overall students. Our third component is a competitive wage adjustment for our non-union employees. This is food service staff, facilities, and office staff, making those positions more competitive in today's market. Fourth, we have to account for inflation. There's rising gas prices, prices of utilities, and also our facilities service contracts. And the last big piece of our story and our budget drivers are our risk management, the investment in capital reserves. So we would like to maintain our commitment to facilities, and we have obligations to special education and some concerns about our health and dental insurance to kind of smooth things out. We're going to talk about all of those things, but those are our main drivers this evening. Okay. We can switch to the next slide. Thank you. So here's our executive summary. We have our budget comparison, which is going to show you our FY23 operating budget to the FY24 proposed as the top line. There is a $476,200 change that represents 8.1% change, okay, an 8.1% increase. The change between the FY23 operating budget and the FY24 default is 6.7%, amounting to $393,054. The difference between the default and the proposed this year is 1.4%, or a total of $83,146. So that's like the little bit of wiggle room. Anything that's in there is 83,146, 1.4% difference. And we'll talk about all of those things that are driving it. We do have some salary and benefit budget assumptions this year. Our MVEA contract is in its third year. It does expire in June of 2025. We also have a 5% market adjustment for the non-union employees. That's the thing that we mentioned a little bit earlier about trying to make our positions competitive so that we can actually get people to come in and help us here in the village school. The health and dental insurance employer contribution rate has increased by 4.1% for health insurance and 1.5% for dental insurance. That's a factor that varies year by year. So those are the numbers that we're looking at this year. Finally, on this budget assumptions, we have the New Hampshire retirement employer contribution rate for the FY 24-25 year. We have a 1.38% decrease. So it's going from 21.02% to 19.64% for teachers, and a 0.53% decrease going from 14.06 to 13.53 for non-teachers. So those are some of the factors that are playing in here for our salary and benefit budget assumptions. This slide gives us a little bit of a picture on our enrollment projections. These projections are based on the NESDEC report. This is something that NESDEC has just started doing for us. So as years go on, the projection will get more accurate. But for right now, as you can see, the trend looks like our enrollment is going to be going up. This is just something to be mindful of as we're talking about the budget. And when we get to the warrants, it again will kind of bring us full circle. So keep this piece in mind as we move forward. Staffing levels are going to remain consistent. So our FY23, you see the current in the blue columns and the proposed, the FY24 proposed over on the right. No change. There's really no story here. It's consistent, again, based on student need and the number of students in the school. Our certified staffing is also remaining consistent. You can see year over year, starting back in FY15 and moving us all the way up through FY24. Really no story here, but we can leave it up for a moment if you'd like to take a look at that. Our support staff. There is a very tiny change on the custodial line. You'll see it is going from a 2.45 to a 2.7. Again, really getting a custodian in at the at that offering, the 2.45 becomes very difficult. So that minor increase allows us to actually hopefully have appropriate staffing here and get people to come in and do the job. So it's a very small increase from 11.6 to 11.8. In our budget by category, this is a question that we tend to get asked, what categories are actually driving the change in the budget? So that's what you're seeing here. You'll see the category is in the left-hand column. The amount that was voted in FY23 is next. The proposed FY24 is in the middle column. Then you've got the dollar change and the percent change. So the major driver, the one that has the highest percentage change, it's not the highest dollar change, but it is the highest percent change, is transportation. So transportation here does include regular and special ed transportation. The main drivers of the change are fuel cost increases. We are in year 2 of 5 of a regular ed transportation contract, and we will be starting a new special ed transportation contract. So that's the main drivers of the change in that line. In student services, I need to make my screen a little bigger here. Sorry, bear with me. In student services, we have an increased student need. That's a 15% change, accounting for 154,000 and a little change. Again, that is a direct contractual need. The facilities line is line 3. That's down. That is an 11% change, 11% increase, about $36,000. In there, we've got the salary and benefits market adjustments that we talked about, and also some utilities, preventative maintenance contracts, That's what's in that line. In the administration line, we have an 8% increase, accounting for 59,828. That again is the SAU assessment, salary and benefits, again, the market adjustments that we talked about earlier. In the curriculum line, we have a 5% increase that's accounting for 167,324. There we've got, again, some salaries are in that line. The AMS tuition changes are in that line. In that, of the 167,000, it's 102,582 is accounting for the tuition change. So that's the main driver in that line. Okay, 102,582 out of the 167,324. The teacher salary changes based on our contract with the MVEA account for 49,964. And the remaining $15,000 in that line is for substitutes, both long and short term. The food service line is a 1% increase. It's accounting for just over $1,000. That again is salary and benefits, the market adjustment. And in technology, we actually have a 14% decrease, accounting for 12,793. That's because we've been able to remove laptops from the budget. They'll be paid for out of ESSER funds. Give you a moment with that slide and then we'll move on. So this slide should be our default calculation. With the default calculation, we take the FY23 adopted budget. We include any contractual services, things that are needed, and we end up adding those in to get to the default calculation at the bottom. So we start with the FY23 budget at the top, which was $5,923,250. You take out the warrant article that was passed, the $50,000, so you'll see that in red. So the subtotal then becomes $5,873,250. Then we go down through those lines, the budget categories, student services, including transport. Apportionment, and a small miscellaneous change, which is actually negative there. So the subtotal of changes to the default are $393,054, accounting for a 6.7% change. And that default calculation is $6,266,304. But that's how we get to the default. For the proposed budget on the next slide, here again, we have our default calculation at the top. So we start with that number that we ended with on the previous slide, $6,266,304. And then we add in any of those things from the categories that are listed below. So the non-union salary and benefits adjustment is up at the top for $59,887. The regular ed transportation costs, $13,790. I will note that we have to pay for transportation whether or not the budget gets adopted. So even though this is showing up in the proposed, it is contractually obligated. We can't include it in the default calculation, but really I would encourage you to think of that as in the default. It's $13,790 that we must pay no matter what. The facilities line there is, again, new equipment, $16,608. There's a floor extractor that accounts for some utilities, and preventative maintenance contracts is what's included there. So maintaining our facilities to the standard that we've been committed, making sure that we don't have any issues in the long term. Our miscellaneous cost there, $7,139, is decreased, so it's 0%. The subtotal of changes from the default to the proposed is $83,146, or a change of 1.4% from the default to the proposed. For those who enjoy a good pie chart, this is for you. The main driver, the main piece of the pie in our budget is salary and benefits. It accounts for about 53% of our budget, 52.7% to be exact. That's the big blue piece on the right. Our tuition to the Amherst School District is the green piece of the pie for 22.9%. We do have student services in that sort of lighter blue piece of the pie. Yellow is transportation. The little piece that's in between the yellow and the student services is technology, that tiny orange sliver. We also have a sliver for food service that's in teal. The orange sliver is facilities. We've got curriculum, and the administration costs are down in red. So that's what makes it up. But our biggest driver is the salary and benefits and our tuition to the Amherst School District. And student services, of course, the contractually obligated student services. We can jump into our revenue review. This is another piece of the puzzle. We do have some changes here in our projected revenue that do impact things a little. Food service costs have a small difference, as you'll see in the first line. Anticipated revenue is $108,446, accounting for about $1,000 change. No change in grant funding. The state and local aid has a minor change, 114,457 to 115, so a $543,000 change. And then there's the prior year fund balance for about 197,481. So our subtotal of revenues is seen at the bottom there. And that's an estimated unassigned fund balance, by the way. For our projected tax rate impact, again, you can see the total appropriations in that top row. We've got FY23 to FY24. You'll see the difference in the appropriation. It's a $426,000 difference in the appropriations. You subtract the revenue and the adequacy aid. The statewide property tax is factored in there as well. So the tax effort is seen in bold, like 3 lines up from the bottom. The valuation is underneath that, and then you'll see the tax rate impact in the bottom line. So our impact in FY24 would be $13.63. The difference is $1.84 per thousand. That's the end of our main review for that article. I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lawrence. So the article was moved and seconded. We did have a presentation, so now I would invite the voters to, if they have questions, they may step up to the microphone. Please state your name and your address if you have a question.
Good evening, Kim Rivers, 35 Salisbury Road. So you're entering into a new special ed transportation. Can you give us a little guidance as to how long that contract is and what increase we should see incrementally next year or the years after as to how long the contract is, please?
Great. I'll turn that over to Ms. Facey or Mr. Chamberlain.
So we are finalizing the contract. It is a different so we put it out to bid in RFP, and we had 3 firms going the pre-bid conference, and only 1 firm submitted a formal bid. So it is projected to be a 4-year contract, and there are incremental increases within the structure of the contract. But what would impact increase more is utilization. So if we had additional students that needed transportation, that would be a significant factor. We have a rider about protecting some gas costs. So if gas goes up, we have a bigger gap than our regular transportation. So we have a little bit of savings there. This contract is structured for 2 different rides, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, separate as opposed to all day. So we think over time, we'll be able to recoup some savings. So fundamentally, I think we'll get the number percent increase, but the more concern is utilization would impact our costs more.
Eileen Neighbor, 14 Beach Hill Road. I believe it was on the slide previous to this one. Yes, projected revenue, prior year fund balance. You have 150,000 for fiscal year 24. Is this the amount that you expect to have, shall we say, unspent for the people that aren't familiar with this word, the unassigned fund balance. This is what we expect to have left over at the end of this school year.
Correct.
Thank you.
And so my follow-up then to be, is that 150,000 taking into consideration any of those warrant articles? So meaning, so it's not, so. So really, the $150,000 less if the warrant articles are voted in, that's really not an assessment of what our tax burden will be, because you wouldn't be giving $150,000 back to the taxpayers if all of those other warrant articles would be voted in. It would be less than that. So what I'm saying is, if you're, I don't want your slide to be somewhat misleading, okay? And I'm not saying it is, but what I'm saying is, what you're putting up there for the tax rate really is not what our tax rate is going to be if this gets voted in and all of the warrant articles get voted in, because all of those would then add more to the tax rate on top of it.
Kind of, but we have this debate every year.
Right, but what
So,
I'm saying is.
Yes, so
you're
on the,
showing
on
it,
the
if you
warrant
go-
article, you'll see what the tax impact would be, like less what it would be if it were returned to the taxpayer. We've included that on each piece, so you'll see that. And
Right, but
we'll come, I'm sure we'll talk
right,
about
so,
it then
but
as
what
well,
you're
but
showing is, can you tell me what all of the warrant articles added up to are together?
do you know?
135, so
Sure.
135. So then really, if that's an accurate number, at that point, you'd only be giving back $15,000 to the taxpayers. So that difference would be quite a bit higher than that.
Bonnie Angeles, 3 Bakers Way. Can you go back to that pie chart just for a second? Looking at that huge green section, tuition, ASD, is that strictly the students who go to ASD? Are there other tuition expenses?
That is the tuition. I don't think your mic is on.
So every child that chooses to leave the school for 5th and 6th grade to go to ASD, that represents the cost that we pay for them to go to ASD. Can you just explain it clear?
So that's the 7th and 8th grade
Seventh.
tuition.
7th and 8th grade
Yeah.
tuition. Yeah. Okay. Do you have an amount on that? What that represents the cost?
Yep.
So the only way to make that smaller is to,
Renegotiate the contract or change the number of students that are going down to the Amherst School District.
okay, so it has nothing, that's the Amherst School District, not a different
Correct,
charter school.
correct.
No.
We
Okay.
do have a minor offset because I believe we still have a couple of students who are tuitioning in up here. Remember a few years ago, we welcomed some Amherst students. So there's a small offset there. I think it's 3 students.
Okay,
think.
I
Oh,
thought it
so AS
represented other schools other than
Oh, no.
the middle
Oh, no,
school.
ASD is Amherst School District.
Right, so that's all that,
Not,
there's no other school included in that green.
no.
Thank you.
Eileen, neighbor, couple of us are still confused. So the 150,000 is right now is your unassigned fund balance. If we were to vote yes on all the warrant articles, that becomes 15,000 off the operating budget, correct?
Yes. So the 150,000 is a worst case scenario at this time of projected revenues and expenses. So that's a worst case scenario. We don't want to have that number be too high because that would artificially inflate the tax rate. So that's a very, very conservative number. As you see, last year it was 347 less 50,000 for the capital reserve. So it was about 247. So it's
Okay.
a conservative number.
So the,
But
when
yes,
we're-
you are correct. In order to fund all of those warrant articles, you would, and have that tax rate as you're looking, it would be 150 plus the 130. but we don't know if those are gonna pass. So in order to calculate the tax impact, you assume that those won't pass because this is just a tax rate for just the budget and not including the special warrant articles.
Which is why, again, on each of the warrant articles, we list the tax impact so that you can see that as well. So you can factor that in when you're making your decision, if that makes sense. But it is a rough year. Can't say that it isn't. I have a little note to remind myself to mention, that we could look at the idea of a tax rate stabilization fund. It is something that towns do, and we are not looking to put it as a warrant this year, but we could look to create a tax rate stabilization fund that would kick in exactly in situations like this where we have a really difficult year. If that fund were funded, it would help to smooth out any of these things where there's a big change in revenue, or any of these big changes where the budget is looking a little rough.
So, Amy, if my math is correct, our tax rate this year was at 11.79. Your impact presentation is saying that the tax impact would go to 13.63 on the tax rate if this warrant article was not amended and changed. And if we added all those other things to them, which would mean that it would come out of what would come back to the taxpayers, the tax rate really would be up to 14.03.
If that 150 is all that's realized. Yes.
Right, if that's not given back, right. The worst case scenario would be at 14.03, but over $14 per thousand for a tax rate in the town of Mont Vernon.
But the-
Okay,
Right.
okay. I think that's what you're looking for. Yeah. Okay, the other question I had is you put some numbers up there in regards to non-unionized staff. And my question to that is, and I know it's a hard market to get things, are those raises for people that are already in place or looking, or those advertised numbers? Is that increase for positions that you are advertising and looking to put those numbers up as opposed to people that are already in place?
So it's a competitive wage for some open positions, because there are some positions we didn't fill this year and some for current, because we're not market competitive. So it's a combination of both.
No. Can you give us what the difference is on that? What is for people that you have in place now and what is for what you're looking for advertising positions?
Food services.
Yeah.
Yeah, food service, we're increasing theirs for current employees.
No, I just meant a dollar amount. Can you give us what the difference is? Like,
For current and for those.
yeah,
open
what
positions.
you're looking to market for open positions and then what it is that you're giving? Is that too much for a number? Sorry.
Want the wage, or do you want the?
Yeah, just the split number, right? I mean, you gave us a number as to what it was. That was going to be the increase, like 59,000 or something like that. I'm wondering what is for positions that are people in house now and what is for ones that you're marketing or looking to hire
Gotcha.
for?
Thank you.
I don't have that number in my speaker notes. We're looking for that number for you, Kim.
And really, that's more of a number for my own housekeeping, so whatever, it's just, so and I know the board does due diligence. The town of Mont Vernon looks like it's gonna have maybe $5 million in warrant articles and almost a 10% increase in our town budget as well. And I know the difference between the default is that, did the board, without having a budget committee, go through to see about trying to get that 89? It's not going to make a difference on the tax rate, right? But can you just give us a little background as to how, how you address that or how much discussion you had in doing that? And I apologize that I haven't.
Absolutely. I mean,
Thank you.
we went back and forth on a lot of the items. There's really not much wiggle room, as you know. And the transportation cost is a fair amount of that, unfortunately. It is what it is. We can't include it in the default, and yet it's here. The other things really, if we don't make those changes, we don't feel that we can get staff to come in those positions or to keep staff. That's a problem. The facilities piece is, again, looking to maintain the facility so we don't have issues here. So it's all in alignment with what the board has maintained as a commitment to the community, to the students, to the facility. I want this to be a different story, but it's not. It's just a hard one. I wish it was not hard. Believe me, if you could feel my feeling right now, you'd know this is a difficult conversation to have. I don't like it, but it's reality. You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Amy Wyman for Wallace Lane. I was curious if the SAU chose to flip the start times back to what they'd always been, do you think that would affect the transportation costs at all?
It's a good question. The regular ed transportation cost is based on the number of buses. And the number of buses, we don't think is a factor based on the flip, but I haven't really thought about that. But so thanks for the question.
I think we're still looking for,
I think we're still.
okay. Right,
We'll make sure you get that, Kim.
okay. I guess seeing no further questions, I'll instruct the school district clerk to place warrant article 2 on the ballot as originally worded in accordance.
Eileen Neighbor, I move to restrict reconsideration.
Okay. Thank you, Eileen. That's seconded. All in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration, please raise your blue card. All opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Okay, Article 3 is for the school property maintenance fund. I'll read that. Article 3, shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $35,000 to be added to the school property maintenance expendable trust fund established in March 2007, with said sum to come from the June 30th, 2023 year-end unassigned fund balance or surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2023. No amount to be raised from new taxation. This special article is a special warrant article per RSA 32:3 VID and RSA 32:7 a majority vote is required. This was recommended by the Mont Vernon School Board 5-0. The estimated tax impact of passing the article is $0. The estimated tax impact of not passing the article is -11 cents per thousand. I'd like to recognize the board to move the article.
I'd like to move Article 3.
Moved by Ms. Lawrence,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Hinckley. With that, I will ask the district, the school board to do a presentation on this article. Thank you.
Thank you. So behind us, you should see a slide of our long-term facilities plan. We have the items, main items listed in that first column, the dollar amount that's associated with them in the middle, and the fiscal year that they are projected over on the right. So the roof was a pretty big project, was a little over $200,000, and that was completed in FY22. If you're outside and taking a look at it, it looks great. Our HVAC duct replacement is a multi-year project started in FY22, slated to be completed by FY25. We have an approximate cost of $243,000 remaining. That is being reviewed for the phase 2 of that project. So that cost is approximate at this time. It could change based on what comes in. Playground equipment is on the list potentially for FY28. The anticipated cost at around $100,000. The fire alarm system in FY 31 at around $140,000. And then potentially expanded facilities plan for an ADA ramp, water system design, HVAC equipment, that kind of thing to be determined. It's simply on the radars, things that may be coming down, coming down the way. So those are our major players in the long-term facilities plan. If we go to the next slide, this gives a little more deeper detail about that HVAC duct replacement project between FY 22 and FY 24. You can see the phases listed out. Phase 1 was completed in FY 22 using ARP and ESSER 3 funds. There was also $88,000 in FY 23 and an estimate of $100,000 for the second phase of the project. That targeted replacement again would be expected to be completed by FY 25. And you can see the breakdown of the funds that are there as well. On the next slide, there is a deeper breakdown of the funding for the facilities plan. So you'll see here, again, the fiscal year in that first column, the contribution in the second column, any withdrawals based on the projected projects, and then the balance over on the right. So if you just kind of follow it, like read it like a book and then snake your way back over, it'll make a little bit more sense. So you'll see in FY 22, we made a contribution of $50,000. We withdrew $207,000 for the roof replacement. That left a balance of $154,000. In FY 23, a $50,000 contribution. $88,000 was used for phase 1 of the HVAC duct replacement, leaving $116,000. In FY 24, we would be asking for a $35,000 contribution, not a $50,000 contribution, making our balance $151,000. Again, with the anticipation of $100,000 or slightly more in FY 25. So being mindful of the fact that this is a difficult year for the tax rate, but also knowing that if we do not continue to fund this, it's going to be an awful lot more painful down the way. So instead of asking for the $50,000, the board felt it was prudent to reduce the ask to $35,000, again, to help as much as we can with that while still maintaining an amount that we think is appropriate and that our facilities director feels is appropriate based on the plan. That's the end of our presentation for that article.
Any questions?
Amy Wyman for Wallace Lane. Could you say what that ESSER, what those letters stand for? Again, I don't remember.
I'll throw that to Ms. Facey.
Yeah.
Or Superintendent Chamberlain.
The ESSER funds were the pandemic relief funds. So that's where ESSER came.
What do they stand for?
I'll have to Google it.
That's what I don't know.
Elementary, secondary school. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice job.
Yeah.
What was that again?
Elementary, secondary schools, emergency relief
Yeah.
Excellent.
for $5, Sam.
I take
Joe.
Any further questions? I'd actually like to make a question. Peter King, Kennel Hill Road. First of all, I do want to say this really, I love to see this, this fund every year. This school, when I got involved 20-something years ago, was an absolute disaster. It was an embarrassment, and the building is looking great every time I come here. I'm so pleased with the building and with the foresight to fund projects in the future. That being said, there is $100,000 on there that's slotted for playground equipment, and I think we can say most, if not all, of the playground equipment has been privately funded. Even the basketball court, we would not have that basketball court had it not been for Eileen Neighbor and a few dedicated people that literally dug that out themselves and built it with no town funds. You didn't dig that? No. They told me you were digging. It was funded by trust, but it wouldn't have happened without you. Okay. So I just would throw that out. Maybe it's PTA thing, maybe it's a community thing. I think the community would be wonderful to get behind a playground equipment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just one comment on that. This facilities plan is being reviewed and revised by our facilities director, Roger Preston. So that is an item that's out later on, but there are some other more pressing needs that are on the list that we're looking at.
Sure.
So, yes.
Yep.
But that's a really good point. Well, we'll bring that back to Roger as a possibility to have that funded outside of this.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further questions, I would instruct the clerk to place Article 3 on the ballot as written. And now we proceed to
Amy Wyman for Wallace Lane. I make a motion to
restrict
restrict reconsideration. There we go.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? There's a second, Kim Roberge. All in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration, raise your card. Thank you. Okay. Now on to Article 4, which concerns an architectural and engineering study. Article 4, shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate a sum of up to $60,000 for the purpose of developing an architectural and engineering study, including conceptual design, program study, cost estimate, and a site review for a renovation addition to the Mont Vernon Village School. The sum to come from the June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance or surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2023. No amount shall be raised from new taxation. This special warrant article is a special warrant article per RSA 32:3, 6D and RSA 32:7(5). The majority vote is required. This is recommended by the school board 5-0. The estimated tax impact of passing the article is 0 per thousand, and the estimated tax impact of not passing is -18 cents per thousand. I'd like to recognize Ms. Lawrence. Would you move this article?
Yes, I would like to move the article.
And the second would be by
All second.
Ms. Hinckley. Thank you. So now I'll invite the board to comment on this.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Forgive me, I'm on week 3 of a gift for my 5-year-old. So hopefully you can hear me clearly. So this warrant article is a continuation of the efforts of the middle school study group that put together a list of options for us. As we know, there's going to be some work done over in Amherst that could impact our tax rate. And we also have our growing community and a coming need to renegotiate our contract and kind of weigh those options. So what this allows us to do is to take in consideration the results of the community survey that was sent out a couple months back and the recommendations for the middle school study group to put a price tag on that so that we as a community can make a decision as to what we want to do moving forward. And it also helps us if we do decide to move forward with renegotiating our contract with our partners down the hill. So really, despite the really difficult year, this is of critical importance for us to put out this year because of the timing of the contract renegotiations. We really need that dollar amount on our options in terms of whether we can add on to this location, if we need a separate building, or if we need to consider other opportunities. This allows us to get that amount and be able to make an informed decision as a community.
The other piece of this is that enrollment projection slide, which if you're looking at that, again, the NASDAQ projections are probably a little bit rough at this point because they're pretty new. But the trend looks like it's going up significantly. So if this is true or even remotely true, we would bump into some space concerns here pretty quickly. So not knowing what the cost associated with an addition would be would tie our hands. Funding this particular warrant article would give us the opportunity as a community to understand what the costs are associated with either a remodel in addition for expanding enrollment or the potential for bringing our middle school students back up the hill. So that's what this does. And again, as Ms. Clark iterated, the timing of it is critical this year. If the warrants pass down in our neighboring community, things would happen quickly there. we again would need to be making decisions here, or at least be informed as what our options are. Without this funding, we have no choice. There is nothing that you can do. It's a do not pass go. So that's why this article is here. And again, recognizing it's a difficult year, but that's why this ask. That's the reason for it. I don't know if any other board members wanted to share anything on it, but I think. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there's a breakdown slide that goes over what that $60,000 would be allocated towards. So it would allow us to evaluate the site and be able to have 3 different conceptual designs, which it's difficult for us to give you a projection of what those designs will be because there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done. Like, can we even get a waivers to be able to expand on this site to even put a price tag on that? But this allows us to find our 3 best options to present to the town. But this isn't making any decision on what we're doing moving forward. This is purely just allowing us to be fully informed on what our choices are in addition to the renegotiation option, so that the whole community is aware of what we can do moving forward. Because this is a difficult year, but then inevitably what happens with the middle school is also going to be a difficult change that we'll need to face.
Kim River, Salisbury Road. I have a hard time wrapping my head around this. And the reason that I do is I believe this school's capacity is 292 students, which gives us almost to the top of that graph in the numbers from the elementary education. So I do understand from a standpoint of it and looking at it from a middle schools, but I think that that comes down to better negotiations with our contract with Amherst. There are some things in there from the contract negotiation that we did that based on their capital expenses that we could look to there to be a little bit better play on that. So though I would love to know what we could do with the site, Mont Vernon has gone through some very large growth in subdivisions recently. We don't have any of those on our planning board chart at this time in the size of the ones that we had previously. As a matter of fact, some of the larger lots have been bought up by single owners that are just going to put one house in there. And it could have gone to a subdivision process. So I'm not sure, again, like you said, those NASDAQ funds are going to continue to fluctuate and we'll be able to look at them, but I'm just not sure whether we're going to see that growth as we seem to. And I still am not sure whether the facility or how you can do something based on what's required in a middle school. Only having, and again, that's a different debate, but I just am not sure that this is, that maybe a contract negotiation with AMS is better than putting our money towards this one. I'm not sure that that's the right choice and for our students at this time.
Amy Wyman for Wallace Lane. Can you go into the detail of, so I know we have the contract with Amherst for the middle school students. And if we wanted to, it's a 5-year contract, right? And if we wanted to end that, isn't there's like a specific, we have to give them advance warning, right?
Mhm.
Is it 2 years? Or I know that this warrant article, the timing hinges on that, right? Because we would need to know within within this timeline for this warrant article about the, will we build, will we not build, before you would need to let Amherst know, are we re-upping the 5-year contract or are we not? I feel like that's the really important piece that
Correct.
isn't getting out there information wise, that's what it's like. If we don't spend the money now to figure out if it's an option to do X, Y, or Z with the land or the building or whatever, then
Correct.
we're stuck.
Correct.
So
So
that's
the
what's those exact.
The tuition agreement is a 5-year agreement with an option to extend another 5 years. Typically, those agreements have been done in 10-year stints, but when we negotiated this last contract, knowing that there was a building project on the table in Amherst, we negotiated a 5-year contract so that we would have some flexibility, understanding that what building decisions happen down the hill will impact our tax rate here. If we stay in a contract with them. So that 5-year flexibility does again give us some wiggle room to make decisions on whether we stay or whether we go. Whether we stay or go, also, we need to know what those costs would be. If we need to go, what does that mean to this community? What are the options? That's why we had the middle school study committee, which provided some very in-depth reports, which we reviewed last year. And the next step to that would be needing to know what are the actual costs associated with any of those options. It's not free to figure that out. So this would help us figure out what next steps are even possible. Probability, who knows? Again, there's so many factors in play, as you mentioned. There's the building project. Does it go through? Does it go through as proposed? What happens with the tuition rate? Could we renegotiate that at the 5-year mark? Yes. There's a lot of things in play here. So the main point of this article is to give the community options so that we can understand what is possible. If we don't do this, we don't know.
I would
But yeah,
also,
the timing is critical.
and I would also add that being aware of our options and showing that we're very serious in considering our options may also assist us in those negotiations. So it allows us as a community to fully understand what our options are, as opposed to betting all on the one opportunity of hoping we can get the best possible deal out of our contract that may not be enough. And hopefully I didn't overstate.
No, it's true.
Zach Johnson, Cemetery Road. My question was, when is the negotiation going to happen, right? Because this is time to do this, then it's time to get any of those proposals onto the town budget to pay for, or school budget, however we pay for it, and then build it. Is this in the next contract? Is it 2 contracts away? What is so, right? Because you get this in and then you're gonna say, okay, we have these 5 options or 3 options to build the school, right? We build a middle school, or we extend the school, or we update the school. Like, when is this contract up? And then when would this benefit us, right? If we don't get any of this information until we're already into the next contract, then it's not imminent now, right? This is not needed today.
The point would be getting the information so that we can make some informed decisions before having to renegotiate the contract. I believe it's July 1st, 2026.
Can I ask a point to clarify? Is the contract up for renegotiation, or is it just an opportunity to re-up the second 5 years?
Correct. Both sides have the opportunity to say yes or no at that point. That's the flexibility at the 5-year mark.
So it is actually a renegotiation, you're saying? It's not just a,
I would have to look at the specific language there. I don't want to misspeak, so I'd need to look at that. I believe
Okay.
we could renegotiate at that point, or we could simply say, we are happy with the way things are and we'd like to continue. And then that would be the negotiation. So I would need to look at the language. I'm not
Okay.
100% sure, so I don't want to misspeak, but I can get back to you on that.
do you know,
Unless someone
Christine?
else knows specifically.
I do,
Yeah.
You do.
yes,
All right.
if I may be so bold. Steve O'Keefe, Mont Vernon. First of all, I am very passionate about this article. I think this is something that is going to be a huge benefit, not only to the community, but really as we make the decisions for our 7th and 8th grade students to properly understand which path or which mechanism to provide their level of education that we are trying to provide inside this building at such a high level. When we take a look at the tuition agreement, we're in year number 2 of the current tuition agreement that was negotiated back 2 years ago. At this deliberative session, we had legal counsel inform us that we were not allowed to have the automatic renewal mechanism to that agreement triggered. It would have to actually come back to this body and the community for a more formal vote in year number 5 as to whether or not it's going to continue. So it kind of forces this community into an automatic renegotiation of that current contract. That contract actually was built on really 5 different pillars. Number 1, the support of our current students going down to the 7th to 8th grade curriculum from a qualitative standpoint, making sure that they had the proper care in the transition, leaving 6th grade down there. It covered our faculty and staff to make sure that we were mandating professional development coordination between our 6th grade educators here, as well as our sixth grade educators over there. It mandated the coverage of our paraprofessionals to make sure that the paraprofessionals were actually bundled together. What the negotiation team had uncovered is that we were being billed for quarter hours throughout the year, and it just didn't make sense because we couldn't tell if a Mont Vernon paid para was taking care of a Amherst student. So we're trying to streamline that process. The fourth piece was to make sure that there was a cap on the tuition agreement to make sure that it didn't exceed a certain level year over year. I know the town of Amherst is going through a negotiation on the ballot with their faculty and their paraprofessionals, their support staff. And so there's a cap that's actually could be potentially triggered as a result of both of those articles passing that would protect the community of Mont Vernon against those escalating costs because we didn't have a seat at that negotiation table. And then the fifth and the final piece was making sure that that overall agreement had an end date of 5 years. And we chose 5 years to be very specific. The 5 years was to allow this community to get together and say, what do we want to do? Because there's a qualitative approach and there's a quantitative approach. Our community probably can educate 40 to 50 to 60 seventh and eighth grade students within inside this building with changes, significant changes for an amount that's less than $1.5 million. But then you've got the qualitative side of, do we offer the quality education, the experience of actually meeting new peers in our seventh and eighth grade environment down at the Amherst Middle School? Is that going to actually be the best situation for them? And so this community needs to properly understand what changes need to be made to this building to make sure that we can properly review and analyze that situation. But more importantly, this building right now is at capacity. It doesn't sound like it is because the building is built for 268. I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Dodd. I know the infrastructure, I think our cap was 270, I think is what the study committee said. But our music program is on the stage. Our teachers are actually sharing classrooms throughout the day. So when we say that we're at capacity, we truly are. We're looking over here in the corner, there's art on cart. I don't know if this is going to be a very similar situation to Amherst 5 or 10 years from now. Hopefully it's not. This community has really embraced this building and the school and the school system. So it's going to continue to support it, or at least that's my belief. And this is the first step to get us to that discussion. What is it going to cost for us to actually properly entertain our seventh and eighth grade students? So thank you.
Appreciate you. Mr. O'Keefe was part of the negotiation.
Zach Johnson again. So I guess you answered a lot of the questions that I had, and then I just wanted to state that, right, you put in there, you kind of brought it up with what do we save, right? Right now we pay our tuition is about $1 million down there. That it's not going to cost us $1 million to build a new building or even upgrade this building to add.
Who knows?
Right, it's going to cost more than that, more than likely, right? To do that, to build it here, and so it was just that kind of thought that I'm assuming that it's going in. We want to get the information so we know. I understand that portion of it, but I think the information onto maybe, I don't know how to put it in there or the wording, because right, that's kind of talking about the wording here, not per se what's actually going into it. But is it, do we need a little more information saying that, okay, we can, if we do this, here's pointing out where that savings is to the townspeople, right? So yeah, we save that $1 million, but obviously we spend to build. And then we have to spend the staff, right? The huge part of our pie was resources for that, for staffing and for benefits and salaries and all those things. And so that not really articulated well. I think it's a very good point, and I think it's a good idea to get the information, but that portion of it isn't well articulated in what we talked about.
So there was an estimate, the middle school study committee did provide some estimates of what those costs would be. So there is a basic breakdown, but again, the detail of it really depends on what it looks like. So that's what we don't know. I mean, the middle school study committee did a beautiful job of presenting as much as they could. but without knowing what things look like, whether it's even possible in this building, whether there needs to be an addition, whether there needs to be a completely separate building, there's no way to know what that is. There are different requirements for middle school. Like if middle school was brought here, there's different requirements for certification. There's different requirements for class structure. So there's a lot of moving parts there. So you're absolutely right that that needs to be explored. And the only way to continue to explore that is really to fund this to do it right. I mean, our public committee did what they could do with the information that's publicly available, is the best way that I can put it, unless someone else is more eloquent.
And I think the other part that we're concerned about is that we are paying this current amount in tuition, but if they do the renovations on the middle school, we are on the hook for some of those capital costs, except we as a town do not have any stake or ownership or equity or anything in that work that we're paying capital costs for. So it may not be a matter of savings, but it may be a matter of ownership of that land and that building. And there's a lot of dimensions to it. It isn't necessarily a matter of cost savings. That's definitely a large component of it. But also, like, is that the right choice for us as opposed to just sending money down a drain? Not that the middle school is a drain by any means, but it is different when it's not our facility, right? So that's part of the conversation.
And the other piece of the puzzle there, if you give me 1 second, the other piece of the puzzle is with the building project in Amherst, the potential is to move the 5th grade down to the elementary school, which then decreases the pool at the middle school. So our students become a larger piece of the pie. Tuition agreement is based on average daily membership. If the pool is smaller and our portion is bigger, we pay more.
Kimmer, Salisbury Road, very quickly, they'll be reviewing Barker Architects study that was done in the building from an addition standpoint.
Excuse me? I didn't hear that. Could you say it slower?
The architectural study that was done.
Yeah, Barker Architects did the study on the building that we paid for back in 2014. I don't know. I still have it.
Yeah.
I do have both reports. So,
Yeah.
because we paid for it twice with 2 different revisions. So it certainly should be reviewed based on
Right.
if it's looking for, if the site becomes able to sustain
Right.
an addition, that they did the full of the entire building.
Yeah, I remember it, but I don't. Thank you. We may reach out to you for that.
Yeah, I just want to add something. I served as the chair of the middle school study committee last year. It was a great committee, and I think the committee did a lot to get to where they did. The report presented a bunch of options and a ton of questions. The questions need professional input to be answered. If we don't fund this, we're not going to answer those questions. And the downside of not moving forward to this is our hands will be tied and we will have to accept the next tuition agreement because we'll have no place to put our kids in. And we really have no bargaining power if we haven't looked into another option. So, you know, it's money, you know, you hate to spend money for no reason, but I think there's definitely a reason here to see, is this the right place? Is the middle school the right place, or is this the right place? There's, you know, we never even tried to answer those questions as a middle school study committee, but we did end it with a bunch of options and a bunch of questions. So, thanks.
The report is available on the SU website, I believe. Yeah.
Kim, just to get back to the 59,000, of the 59,000, 20,000 is for, so the flat pool is 3%, but we went 5% for 4 positions. But we also increased time in the custodial position. So that includes increased time and a 5% increase for some of those positions. So it's a break about 40,000 to 3% pool, 20,000 for the incentive to attract and retain employees that we've had a lot of turnover for. But thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I'll instruct the school district clerk to place warrant Article 4 on the ballot as originally worded in accordance with the state statutes. Thank you. Would someone propose a motion?
Eileen Neighbor, I move to restrict reconsideration.
Okay, is there a second on the motion? Second by Kim Roberge. All in favor, raise your blue cards, please. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now we move to Article 5, which pertains to Students with Disabilities Capital Reserve Fund. Article 5, shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $20,000 to be added to the Mont Vernon School District Student with Disabilities Capital Reserve Fund previously established in March of 2016. This sum to come from the June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance or surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2023. No amount to be raised from new taxation. A majority vote is required. This was recommended by the Mont Vernon School Board 5-0. The estimated new tax impact of passing the article is 0 per thousand. The estimated new tax impact of not passing the article is -6 cents per thousand. Would you like to move, Ms. Lawrence, would you like to move the Article 5?
I'll move Article 5.
And second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Hinckley. Now I'll invite the board to discuss.
Thank you. So the Students with Disabilities Fund is an existing fund. There is a current balance, I believe, of $32,000. The recommended contribution request is $20,000, which would bring it to just over $50,000 to $52,000. The reason for this ask is basically to reduce our risk. It provides support for unanticipated needs. As you can see, one of the main drivers of our budgetary change is a need in student services. So if one or more students come in with a significant need, this money could be used to help offset that cost. That's the basics of it. What goes in, I don't have what goes in and out of it. We do have a capital reserve fund review
No,
in total.
I know, but meaning, like you did for the property maintenance, that you show that the earmarked things, I mean, I understand the purpose of this, but we have to, if a student comes into our district, we have to fund it, and we'd like to keep this under $14 per thousand. I mean, we're Mont Vernon. And so I'm wondering if with having 32, did you say in that this could be forgone this year if we haven't drawn out of it in the last year, or what's been put in to take out? I understand it's a minor number, but it does get us under 14 if all the other ones pass.
We did talk about that. We did talk about not funding this. We did talk also about expending it. That was part of the board discussion. What do we do with this money? 32,000 doesn't get us very far, unfortunately. If we add 20,000 and we get to 50,000, that helps to smooth things out a little bit more. There's 6 of one, half dozen of another here. What do you do with it? We felt as a board that it would be nice, it would be helpful to have 50,000 in that fund with the understanding that growing it a little bit further over the years would help to smooth out a hit in a year where we're having a really difficult one. I know this is a difficult year as well. That's why this is Article 5. And for anyone who doesn't know, the order of the articles matters. So the order they get funded, if there's unexpended fund balance, the order that they're approved in matters. So Article 3 would be funded before Article 5 if there's not enough funding in the unexpended fund balance.
And thank you for that explanation. I believe in every year past, they have all been funded if we have done it in this order. I cannot recall a time, except for 1 year, where that hasn't gone back. I really want to zero one of the next two out. Or drop them so that something comes under 14. And so I would like the board to, I don't know, help me make that. I mean, I'm going to do it. Do we want 10 in this and 5? I mean, help me to decide, because it may not pass, but I really want to be under 14. And I understand that it's a conservative number and maybe that'll be that, but I told you that town budget, it really was up 14%, and the budget committee is presenting to try to get under 10 and $5 million of warrant articles. This town, even a little, it helped.
Kim, would you like to make a motion to amend the article? It's not something that the board is willing to do.
Eileen Neighbor. Okay, I have the report here. Now, this one is of December 20, because this is December 2021. This capital reserve was established in 2016. There's been no money added to it. There's been no money expended from it. So it now has a balance of $31,731. It would seem to me over a period of, what, 6 years, it's never been tapped. I see no reason to add to it.
Kimmer, I believe I can. Yes, right. Kimmer, Salisbury Road.
Pick the microphone up so we can.
Kim Rober, Salisbury Road.
Yep.
I make a motion to, based on no, Eileen's history of what has gone in and out of that account. And knowing that if somebody comes into the district, though there is a fluctuation that we will have to fund it, that we make this $0.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, do you have a copy of Article 5?
District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $0 to be added to the Mont Vernon School District Student with Disabilities Capital Reserve Fund established in March 2016. The sum to come from June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2023. No amount to be raised from taxation, majority vote required.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion. Do we have a second for that motion? We have a second by Eileen Neighbor. Tanya, did you get the amendment? Yeah, okay, thank you. Is there discussion on the amendment?
So how this came up, this year, there were discussions about freezing the budget due to unanticipated cost, due to a fluctuation in special education. We looked at, so why do we call this risk mitigation? Is the goal is to implement the budget that is supported by this community. That is what, gets voted. And you're right. If we don't have the funds, then you freeze the budget and you move funds around and you reduce the program. And is this the year? This was significant discussion with the board, and everything that you said was said at the board. It really is about self-insurance at a time that this year, so things happened that we were able to implement the budget with the fluctuation in circumstances. But it is very possible that someday we will have to freeze a budget to meet our legal obligations. And by putting money away, that reduces the risk and increases our ability to implement the budget as supported by the voters. The $20,000 hasn't been used, but so what would be, typically, like, a cost for a student could be 6 figures. So you'd have to find 6 figures. Having $50,000 means you only have to find half of it. But I get it, and what you're doing is perfectly right. I trust the voters and trust the will, but this was done to increase insurance, to implement the budget as supported by the voters, and not freeze it and not reduce program. But is this the year? Sometimes I say at the meetings, Meg can sleep tight, Amy can sleep well, and I can sleep well. The more insurance you have, self-insurance, the ability is to, but 20, for me, when I got here, this was a very risky amount in this day and age in what we're facing with students. But maybe it's next year, and I get it. So that's where it came.
Okay, I'm seeing no further discussion. First of all, I would like to ask our council, is it okay to zero out an amount? It's okay, okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'll read the article and then we'll vote on the article. Article 5 as amended. Shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $0 to be added to the Mont Vernon School District Student with Disabilities Capital Reserve Fund previously established in March of 2016. The sum to come from the June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance or surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2023. No amount to be raised from new taxation, majority vote required. So now we're going to vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your blue card. Opposed? The amendment fails. Do we have further discussion on the article? Seeing no further discussion, I instruct the school district to place warrant Article 5 on the ballot as originally worded in accordance with state statutes. Statutes, not statues. Sorry.
Okay. Make a motion to restrict reconsideration of
Okay.
the last article.
Okay, motion by Amy
Amy
Wyman.
Wyman for Wallace Lane.
Thank you. Is there a second on that motion to restrict reconsideration? Eileen Neighbor, all in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 4? Raise your card. All opposed? The motion passes.
Point of order.
Yes.
Mr. Moderator, you said Article 4, but that was actually Article 5.
That's what I just thought.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I just saw that. So. Yeah. So that brings the discussions to a close. I applaud the folks who,
We have Article 6.
oh, I lost a page. That's why I messed up here. Sorry. I lost a page. Hang on. I don't have it either. I knew I had it. I have it in the other page. Okay. Yeah, it's in this one. Yeah. I didn't copy it into my notes. Okay, so Article 6. Shall the Mont Vernon School District establish a health and dental insurance expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 198:2C for unanticipated health and dental insurance payments and raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be placed in said fund. Further, to name the Mont Vernon School Board as agents to expend from this fund. The sum shall come from the June 30th, 2023 unassigned fund balance surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2023. No amount to be raised through new taxation. Majority vote is required. It's recommended by the Mont Vernon School Board 5-0. The tax impact of passing is $0. The estimated tax impact of not passing the article is -5 cents per thousand. Is there a motion to move that article?
I make a motion to move Article 6.
Motion by Ms. Lawrence,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Hinckley. Discussion, please.
So Article 6, again, would help to provide support for unanticipated health or dental insurance plan changes. We are contractually obligated to this as a benefit for for some of our staff, I believe, if not all of our staff. All of our staff? Some of our staff.
All of our 30-hour more.
All of our 30-hour or more staff. Thank you for the clarification. So what this would do is this would allow us to buffer any changes that happen that are not anticipated. For example, if someone went from a single plan to a family plan, those costs, we have to pay them. And right now we would not have a buffer associated with that. So the board felt that it might be prudent to put $15,000 aside in this fund, again, to mitigate any changes in the insurance election if it happens. It is not an existing fund, so it would be a new fund.
Amy Wyman for Wallace Lane. I had a question about the sentence further to name the Mont Vernon School Board as agents to expend from said fund. Is that just boilerplate, or is that, did you have to specify that for a specific reason? Is that not how that is typically done? Or it just the wording of it caught my eye. I don't know. Is that?
Our legal counsel
Yeah.
nodded at me, so I think that
Okay. It's typical. Okay, I guess that's what I was looking for. Was there someone else that's typically the
So
agent or?
instead of coming back to this meeting and waiting
Yeah.
a year for
Yeah.
you guys to
Got it.
allocate it,
Okay.
the board can do it as needed. So that's why that language, without that language, we'd have to wait till this meeting to ask you to, if we can buy the insurance or buy the fire. Does that make sense?
Eileen Neighbor, before we get to the end of the meeting, I just want to compliment the board. I think this is the first time in my recollection that the tax impact of any of these articles is expressed correctly. And I understand it came maybe, it came from wherever it came
Thank you.
from. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Article 6? Seeing none, I'll instruct the clerk to place this on the warrant, on the ballot for election. That brings to an end the close of discussion of the articles. Oh,
Amy
Oh.
Wyman for Wallace Lane. I make a motion to
Thank you.
restrict Article 6 from reconsideration. I said that wrong, but is that
it's good
okay?
enough.
Close enough? Okay.
Yep. Is there a second on that? Ian Dodd, second. All in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration, please raise your card. Thank you. That motion passes. So that brings the meeting to a close. Is there any other business to be discussed or brought forth to the meeting?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I want to thank you for your service to the community of Mont Vernon. How many years of moderator? 4, 3?
For moderator, I think it's 5, maybe
5
6, I don't
years.
know, but
So
yeah,
I noticed you're not on the ballot this year.
Right.
It's sad, but
right.
as a community member, thank you for your service to
Yeah,
to
it's been a
not only
pleasure.
the school board here, but to the community at large.
Yeah.
And we'll miss you, and hopefully we can find somebody else to fulfill that
I hope
that
so.
role. Maybe Eileen could be our moderator next year. I appreciate that. And then just one last final comment to the members of our board and administration. You guys have built, in conjunction with not only our faculty and staff, a very special place. And you should be proud of that. It's been a rough couple of years for a majority of you guys serving in a public role or public service is tough at times. But I know you find it rewarding. And as a community member, I appreciate that. I want to thank you for the time, the effort, and more importantly, the due diligence to the taxpayers of this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I really thank all the folks that came into the room to support the school, to support the town. I hope you can share what you've learned tonight, and I encourage you to come to vote on March 14th between 7 a.m. 7 p.m. in this room. I declare the deliberative session closed. And a couple of announcements. I want to announce that there is a school board. We'll be meeting after this meeting. I also want to recognize there's a couple of folks in the back there that one has declared a candidacy for Sauhegan, Sonny Stokinger. Thank you. And there's another gentleman sitting next to her, Zach Johnson, who has expressed an interest in an open position that was not applied for the Mont Vernon School Board. So if anyone has questions, I'm sure they would be willing to answer a few questions after this meeting. Thank you.